Western Ag Network on the Road from the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show, brought to you by Ag Risk Advisors.
Well, hi everybody from Douglas, Wyoming. This On the Road segment is sponsored by Ag Risk Advisors, experts in providing farmers and ranchers risk management solutions and tools. You can learn more by visiting agriskadvisors.com. Well, this week here in Douglas at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show, a lot of important issues impacting the cowboy state's beef cattle industry have been discussed and even cussed just a little bit here at the Wyoming State Fairgrounds. And Wyoming Stockgrowers Association President Jack Berger out of that Saratoga country says they're still very much fortunate to be able to gather as an association and discuss these issues that are impacting so many cattlemen and cattlewomen, not just here in the cowboy state, but beyond. Well, for as long as I can remember, Douglas has been home of the Wyoming State Fair, and here in 2024, it's also hosting the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association's annual convention and trade show. And joining us from Saratoga, Wyoming is the current president of the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association, Jack Berger. And Jack, you were telling us before we kicked off this interview that every summer WSGA tries to move this annual convention around the cowboy state to kind of give cattlemen and cattlewomen the opportunity to maybe drive less, or in some cases drive a little bit more, but nonetheless just bring folks together for a very important meeting.
Yeah, it is. It's good to move this summer meeting and try and get closer to some people, and maybe get some each year that can't get away too far, but they can at least come for part of the meeting and stuff. So we moved the summer meeting, and the winter meeting's always in Casper.
Well, I mean, as we talk about doing this interview here in June of 2024, boy howdy, hasn't been this cattle market been something else?
This cattle market's been great, and we're looking forward to that, and it should be really good. And the moisture's not bad. There's dry areas. It's not quite like it was last year, but there's most of the country looks pretty good.
Yeah, and there's always never a lack of issues to really talk about at conventions like this. And I know a big theme this year is really having leadership and membership, hear about the different partnerships and the importance of working as a team with some of those other federal partners out there that are, as ranchers here in the cowboy state and other states. I mean, we have to have a good working relationship with the Fish and Game, and we have to have a good working relationship with the BLM, Forest Service, and that's going to be a big part of this year's convention.
Yeah, our theme is building partnerships, and we're going to have a panel discussion with a producer and his BLM range con, a producer and a Forest Service range con, producer and NRCS person, and the other is a producer in the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the kind of partnerships you can build. And even though things may not be going like we like it on the national level, it's still on the ground. There's these partnerships and these people that you deal with on a daily basis, and you can do some good things.
Well, that's what I was just going to follow up with, Jack. I mean, one of the main priorities at the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association is to work with some of your federal partners like the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and the Public Lands Council to keep those ranchers in states like Wyoming that utilize America's public lands on those public lands for grazing. And that truly is a high priority issue.
Well, it really is. And NCBA's been really good. And we had we always have a meeting with the federal agencies. We had that this afternoon, where it's kind of a closed meeting where the BLM and Forest Service are there, and we talk about issues and how we can work together. And we have a tour with them with the Forest Service every summer, and this year it's in Pinedale, and we kind of tour a different forest every year, and we get out on the ground and see their projects and have discussions and stuff, and it's all about building partnerships.
Well, and for a lot of ranchers out here in the West, without access to those public lands, they wouldn't be able to ranch. They wouldn't be able to pass that operation on to the next generation. Explain.
Yeah, those public lands are real important to us. We have our base property, our deeded lands, and our area of the state anyway, that's where you winter is on the deeded lands and summer on the public lands. And there's other areas where it's kind of the reverse of that, where they winter on the public lands. But you still have to have those partnerships and a working relationship. And they were talking today about on the forest about how some of those places aren't being grazed to the management level they want and stuff like that. And it does, the grazing is good for it. Everybody's kind of coming to realize that. I think that, it's good for the wildlife. It's good for, the plant health and stuff like that. Those plants are meant to be grazed and stuff like that. So it's a good thing.
One of the things that I know organizations like the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association and so many others across the West that would really like to see happen is some meaningful reform to the Endangered Species Act.
Yeah, and it just kind of took a turn in the wrong direction. We'd like to have it be where it's not a burden to producers if they have an endangered species. They should be the partner and the cooperator in that, which I think the producers are willing to do. They don't want to be the victim in these deals, and that's the thing. The Endangered Species Act had good intentions. It kind of took a wrong turn there and stuff, and has been a liability. And I think it could be a lot better tool and have a lot more success if they would look at the producers as a partner.
Jack, in life, they tell us there's only two things that are certain: death and taxes. And we're still alive, I guess, so we've accomplished that. But I think a lot of us are facing some challenges, when it comes to taxes. And gosh, agricultural operations, one of the biggest burdens out there is the estate or death tax. And the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association would also like to see some meaningful tax reform legislation, more specifically in the area of death taxes.
Yeah, that death tax is a killer to so many operations and stuff like that, and it shouldn't be. It should be something that's workable and be able to pass on to the next generation. And if you force people to sell out because of the death tax, maybe it's going to be houses or at least a absentee owner, maybe from out of state or something like that. But to keep it in the family, that death tax is really a liability.
Well, and just to wrap things up, and to bring things full circle, the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association is trying its darndest to get more young men and women and youth involved with the beef cattle industry here in the Cowboy State, and that is a big priority.
Yeah, it is, and we're having some ranch succession workshops. We did some last year, and we have another series of them in August this year around the state. This will be more southern Wyoming this time, and people should look at taking advantage of those. It's free, and it's like a 3 or 4 hour session, and this guy's really good. And if they have issues with their succession or need some ideas, they should show up because it's really good. So, and we'll have the schedule out on the website here soon, so yeah, that would be good.
Well, we know it's going to be a busy week. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time again today. We've been visiting with Jack Berger, the president of the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association, as I mentioned at the top of the segment, from that Saratoga country, now entering year number 2 of his presidency. And there is truly a lot of important things going on and a lot of good work being done on behalf of cattlemen and cattlewomen and so many others across the Cowboy State at the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association. Just one more reason, if you haven't done so, to go ahead and pay your dues. As Jack mentioned, for more details about the association, everything they've got going on, and of course, everything that's coming up, just jump online and visit their website.
Ready for a real PRF partner?
He was willing to track us for a year and provide that data back to us for a year. That's a guy making a pretty big investment.
At Ag Risk Advisors, this isn't our first rodeo. We are one of the most experienced in pasture rangeland forage. Honesty, commitment, trust. Many companies use these words. At Ag Risk Advisors, we earn them.
Well, as we continue our coverage from here in Douglas at the 2024 Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show. Always a great time to catch up with some old friends and, of course, along the way, meet some new ones. And one of those old friends we ran into this week here in Douglas, Doug Miyamoto, the Wyoming Department of Agriculture's current director. And first of all, congratulations. The Wyoming Stockgrowers Association gave you an award during this year's convention here in Douglas. Congrats.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Russell. I mean, I've known all these people for the entirety of my career, which is coming up on 3 decades now that I've been working in Wyoming agriculture, and there is no higher honor than to be recognized by producers themselves for the work that you've tried to do. That award I see as being part of my job, but it is nice to be recognized, so it's sincerely appreciated.
Well, very much and very well deserved for sure. And man, they've been tackling some big issues already here in Douglas that are going to impact Wyoming's beef cattle industry, but some of those issues also impacting America's beef cattle industry, you know, things like country of origin labeling and trade and gosh, just making sure we have a working relationship with some of those other government agencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to always keep a finger on the pulse of national politics and really global politics as well. Conventions like this give an opportunity for producers to be able to network with one another and then be able to talk with people like me that do agriculture policy every day to know what's going on and where pressure needs to be applied to make sure that we can keep ranchers ranching, farmers farming. That's the idea behind the whole thing, but there's a multitude of issues that are extremely important right now, a lot of policy coming together all at one time. So this convention really couldn't be timed any better.
Well, and of course, one of those big policy issues that state departments of agriculture across America are working on, including right here in Wyoming and your office, is of course watching what comes out of Congress, hopefully yet this year, a new farm bill.
Yes, reauthorization of the Farm Bill is something that the entire agriculture community really waits on. Because if there was ever a convalescence of agriculture policy and a plan for the future of American agriculture, that's the document that would most aptly describe how we do agriculture in the United States. And so that's important for everybody that participates in agriculture today, and it's also important for messaging around the world that we do business with, that the United States still supplies, you know, the safest, most reliable, most abundant food sources in the world, and that separates us globally. So it's a very important document. Everybody's waiting on bated breath to see which versions will pass, and I'm hoping that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's for sure, and a lot of others across rural America have that same sentiment. Now, this past year you had the incredible experience of serving as president of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, NASDA. What was that like to represent all of America's state departments in that capacity and do it from your position here in Wyoming?
Well, it was unique for sure. It's one of those it was a great honor to do that. It was also a lot of work to do that. So I was happy to do it. It was a fantastic experience for me and for the folks that work at the Wyoming Department of Agriculture. But it's something that you wouldn't want to do all the time, you know, because it is an extra load of work that is taken on primarily by the staff of the Wyoming Department of Ag. So I have to thank them for the support as well. But, you know, it's one of those instances that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so this is the first time that Wyoming has served in this capacity for the National Association, and it being a Farm Bill year, I thought that it would give Wyoming an opportunity to punch above its weight, like we often do. We have to. In Wyoming agriculture, we're expected to make an impact beyond our numbers. That was the idea behind taking on that task, and I got to work with all of my counterparts from around the United States. All have different priorities, but they're all trying to do the same thing, and that's level the playing field for agricultural producers and advocate for them at the same time. It was a fantastic experience, and I was glad that I got to do it.
I bet it was, and it's pretty cool that you got to have the Cowboy State in the national spotlight, like you said, for the very first time, at least in this capacity. You know, over the years, Wyoming has hosted quite a few trade missions, you know, from livestock to crops to just about everything in between. But you were also telling me that you yourself had an opportunity to do a trade mission over in Nairobi. Talk about what that was like and exactly where Nairobi is on the globe, and why that matters to farmers and ranchers back here at home.
Yeah, there are opportunities from time to time for us to participate in these outbound trade missions, and the reason that somebody like me typically goes isn't about necessarily creating trade deals, you know, or trying to mandate a certain quantity of a commodity in exchange for a certain amount of money. We go mostly to discuss policy. So we try to identify the trade barriers that are keeping our producers from being able to sell products in other parts of the world. That's one aspect of it. Then the other aspect of it is just global positioning of political will. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of influences in places like Nairobi in different countries jockeying for position to try to dictate how global trade is going to happen in the ag arena. So a lot of times we'll go on these trade missions to try to make sure that we're representing the interests of our producers. For Kenya and Nairobi itself, that's on the eastern side of the African continent. The reason I was there is that they graze cattle at about 6,500 feet elevation, which fairly accurately describes a large swath of the state of Wyoming as well. Mm-hmm. They're interested in some livestock genetics trade in Nairobi, and we have some genetics that address issues like brisket disease that we might be able to offer to help them with performance in that setting. So there's always opportunities globally, but most of the work that we do is on the policy front to make sure that the United States protects its voice and its standing in the global ag trade arena.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, and Wyoming truly over the years has become, you know, the beef cattle industry leader in the area of pap testing and helping ranchers, not just here in America, but across the world, as you just mentioned, deal with that brisket disease, which impacts quite a few people who try to ranch and raise livestock in higher elevations. Doug, as we wrap things up, we want to bring things back here to Wyoming, and you said you were pretty proud of how things are going out there in those weed and pest districts across the Cowboy State.
Yeah, I am. There's a lot of projects that are coming online now, and we have an opportunity to meet with the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council, and we had a meeting with them earlier in the spring. And we get a lot of reporting from them about how things are going. And I've seen a lot of progress, a lot of evolution in projects that extend beyond county boundaries. So you have a lot of weed and pest districts that are collaborating together for larger impacts. And I think, as we all know, invasive species don't care at all about borders, and it's going to take that kind of larger effort to really manage a lot of those species. I just have seen that program grow over the time that I've been at the Wyoming Department of Ag, and it's one of those programs that I think is really moving in the right direction, and it's going to have to, because those invasive species challenges are ever increasing, and I'm just proud that there's folks on the ground that are protecting our ag industry from losses, and invasive species are a huge concern. So that was one program that, you know, over this past year, I think has really elevated itself, and something that I wanted to mention and let people know that there's a lot of good work that those districts are doing on behalf of Wyoming producers.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool, and certainly kudos to all those hardworking men and women out there, out in the countryside, and also a big thank you and a job well done to, like you said, your team in Cheyenne at the Wyoming Department of Agriculture. Our thanks to Wyoming Department of Agriculture Director Doug Miyamoto for joining us here at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show in Douglas, Wyoming. Well, for ranchers, their pasture and rangeland truly are two of their most valuable assets. And this week here in Douglas, Wyoming, at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show, it's been fun to catch up with ranchers from across the Cowboy State and beyond, plus other industry leaders who share that same passion for Wyoming's beef cattle industry, and of course America's beef cattle industry for that matter. And one of those industry leaders in attendance this week here in Douglas is Justin Hossfeld with Envu Range and Pasture. And Justin, boy, just like us, it seems like you and your team have been on the road a lot already here in early summer 2024. Great though to get out and about and catch up with these cattlemen and cattlewomen.
That's right. We always enjoy getting out, getting back in touch with the folks and helping them understand that all those different forces pulling on them and the timing a lot of times of being successful. We want to be sure we're here and helping them understand that this is a great time to be investing in that resource and optimizing that equity.
Yeah, and there's quite a few smiles on these producers in attendance. You know, last week we were in Miles City for the Montana Stock Growers. This week we're here in Douglas for the Wyoming Stock Growers meeting, and gosh, we'll be across the west in the next few weeks or so down in Colorado Springs. But it's amazing what a little bit of moisture, green grass, and of course these record high cattle prices will do for attitudes, right?
That's right. Yeah, and that is right, and it does put you in the right attitude and frame of mind to be investing back in the ranch, because when you start to see that cash flow, when you start to see that opportunity, it does help you maybe get out of that mode of being in the ranch and thinking about the future of the ranch and start working on the future of the ranch. So these opportunities are great to be able to think and talk about that.
And of course, you've been visiting with cattle producers and other livestock producers this spring and this summer about some important tools and products and services that you folks at Envu Range and Pasture have available, and one of those is RangeView. Tell us a little bit about this new and exciting technology.
You bet. So as we brought these great tools like Rejuva and Vora, Resilon, the other products we have, we know that to get the best use of those, you got to be able to look at the space and know how to best utilize that product on the space. And so we brought in RangeView, which is a digital solutions tool that allows you to assess the space you're working on, see where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then optimize how you attack those problems and how you get the best outcome from it. But we're really excited now, we're coming with a new module in RangeView with grazing management. So what grazing management does is as we had species detection and how to do a treatment. Now with grazing management, we can help you do the right things with the grazing resource, making sure we're rotating through the pasture correctly. We can show you removal rates, so we can give you a timeline in the pasture, start sending you alerts when it's time to move. It's that silent herder, it's that extra hired man that you have with you watching that space while you're focusing on other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, it seems like today, I mean, back in the day, technology like this might have scared the daylights out of us.
That's right.
But I mean, truly, it doesn't matter if you're young or old. I mean, we're all using smart devices. We're getting better equipped, and our know-with-all is becoming, it seems, better every day to utilize technology like this.
That's right. Our comfort level grows with every interaction from a gas pump. Remember in the old days you pulled out the nozzle, now you punch buttons to get your gas. With all those type of things, that's what we have with RangeView too. It's that familiarity and that ability to just keep using that knowledge and grow that knowledge. But we always know that we're going to work in the business. We got, with our labor situations we have nowadays and the workload we have, we're always going to be out there doing those tasks on the ranch. But technology can now help us work on the business while we're working in the business. And that is one focus we've really put into RangeView. Very user-friendly, not overly complicated. It's specifically designed for that space. It's not another platform that was kind of shoehorned into it. We designed it specifically for the range and pasture space.
Well, let's change gears just a little bit and talk about Rejuva and some of those type of rangeland and pasture land herbicide tools that Envu has to offer to livestock producers, because holy cow, it doesn't take too long for invasive species like cheatgrass and Medusa head and a new one to the west, Ventonata, to completely take over and just decrease overall productivity, which of course at the end of the day means less dollars in those ranchers' pocketbooks.
That's exactly right. When we look at risk protection, when we look at how we're best going to weather all the different storms we can, the safest and easiest place, and the one we're most prepared to do it in, is in our range and pasture. And if we can take that volatility, if we can take those invasive species out, if we can optimize the growth of those desirable species, that is true risk management for us. We stay in that pasture longer, we have higher performance from those cattle, and we're a better steward of that space. we're putting equity back in the ranch with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a proven technology
That's right.
with ranchers across the West who are using it and finding tremendous success with it, correct?
That is correct. We're in multiple millions of acres of Rejuva down by this point, and a lot of really loyal customers finding new and better ways to use it. For an example, we really went out originally attacking these invasive annual grasses. Now we have them using it on seed bank management on a lot of nuisance broadleaf weeds. So they're starting to see the different ways they can use it from that example of success.
You know, I just kind of want to wrap things up, Justin, by talking about, we've been talking about a lot of, you know, the tools that are out there in the field, on the ground right now, like Rejuva, like Rangeview. But sometimes we forget to mention that there's a lot of stuff going on every single day at Envu Range and Pasture that is behind the scenes in the terms of product development, research, and of course, just your guys' investment in people.
That's right. And I thank you for bringing that up, Russell, because that's very meaningful to us. We're very passionate about that space, as you said earlier, and we're very confident and very dedicated to the products that we bring you, but we want to support you after you have that product. It's thought leadership, it's technical advice, it's the ability to manage the new space that you get once you use our products. We are investing a huge amount of money in that, from a person to help you find grant funding, to PhD people to help you with the species, to even a person that we have that helps you with government entities and make sure all those synergies come together at once.
Well, we sure appreciate you taking a little bit of time for us here in Douglas at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show to talk about all the new exciting things going on at Envu Range and Pasture. Again, we've been talking about Rangeview. We've been talking about things like Rejuva, and our guest has been Justin Hossfeld with Envu. You know, we could spend literally all day, especially on a beautiful day here in the Cowboy State like today, but you know, one of your best resources out there to learn more about everything Justin and his team have to offer for ranchers out here in the West is just jump online and visit Envu Range and Pasture's website. Well, the Beef Checkoff program continues to do some amazing things for beef checkoff investors and, of course, consumers across the nation and really the entire world for that matter in areas like product development, research, promotion, and more. And here in Wyoming, the Wyoming Beef Council is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary here in 2024. As we do this interview here at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show in Douglas, it's fun to catch up with the Wyoming Beef Council's chairman, Eamon O'Toole from Beggs, Wyoming. And Eamon, what a beautiful day here in the Cowboy State. I can't even hardly believe, but there's not even a whole bunch of wind down here in this part of Wyoming today. And what a fun time to catch up with cattle producers from across the state. And in your case, what an incredible time to be involved with the beef cattle industry. Green grass, record high cattle prices, and of course, you folks at the Beef Council celebrating your 50th anniversary this year.
You bet, Russell. We're super excited about it, and it's been a you know, a long time going, and we've just are excited that we can be a part of all these pieces, and it's really exciting for us as board members to be on it right now at 50 years.
You know, just walk us through a little bit about what's going on at the Beef Council that's helping to promote that wonderful protein that you and so many others across the Cowboy State are raising beef.
Yeah, we got to visit with Dr. Cody Gifford, and he's doing a lot of stuff with research on what can we do with the round. That's one of those pieces that's, you know, harder to sell, a little different kind of meat, and he was using sous vide, and we had some taste testers of that, and boy, it was delicious. So Dr. Cody Gifford's doing some great work there on the research side.
Well, and you're doing a bunch of stuff within the borders here in Wyoming, but of course some of that checkoff investment that's collected here in Wyoming also goes to bigger programs and projects outside of Wyoming. And one that caught my eye this year was you and some other state beef councils have actually partnered up to help fund beef as a bigger promotion for Little League and the Little League World Series, and of course for the ladies on the softball side of things. That's a cool promotion.
Yeah, we were so excited about that, and we were able to anytime we can get more people, you know, these great women in softball are going to be mothers someday, and they're going to hopefully feed that good, delicious beef to their kids. And then the same thing, you got these kids in Little League eating our beef products, and the more we can get it out there and the more we can represent it, it is really exciting.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and for a lot of years, I know you've been part of a bigger mission to help promote beef and get beef into the hands and on the plates of consumers in some of our larger markets out there. And that too is important because, you know, those bigger population centers outside of the rural America West, like Wyoming, there's a lot of opportunity to increase beef consumption.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we do send quite a bit of money, you know, back east to promote not just Wyoming beef, but beef in general. And, you know, explaining it to people in Wyoming, they're like, well, we already eat beef. So they said, let's send our money and get people back east to eat beef that maybe have different opinions about it, and we can promote it to them, and they want to get into the beef consumption.
You know, speaking of beef consumption, I mean, the Pacific Rim is a huge, important market for beef cattle producers as a whole here in America. And just a few weeks ago, you and some others from beef producing states participated in a U.S. MEF trade mission to Japan and South Korea. What was it like for a rancher from Beggs, Wyoming, to see some of that high quality U.S. beef in these huge population centers in that Pacific Rim?
Yeah, it was, you know, Japan was the first U.S. market that we started exporting beef to. So that was, you know, very exciting. And then we flew into Seoul, South Korea, and we got to see lots of, we went to Costco, and we went to local grocery stores, and, you know, visited with embassies, visited with the Big Four that were representing U.S. beef over there, and learned so much about what we're doing over on the Pacific Rim. And their populations are just unbelievable for, you know, a guy from Wyoming. So to see a place that we can be spending our checkoff dollars and partnering that checkoff dollar with corn and soybeans and other checkoff groups, it really makes our dollar that much stronger. And it was just really exciting to see, you know, how we've made partnerships and worked with other places. But there were 15 of us from all over the United States, from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we, I think everybody had an eye-opener, and we really were pretty excited to see what the checkoff dollar's doing.
Well, it really is eye-opening when you see those important export markets like South Korea, like Japan, and of course so many other places around the world, you know, where we're promoting that high quality U.S. beef. It doesn't take too long to realize that you know, checkoff funded programs, you know, like the work being done on behalf of beef checkoff investors like yourself through groups like the U.S. Meat Export Federation, really are doing some important work and creating more value for those animals back home on these ranches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one thing I wanted to just put in there is that the BQA, we were able to get 418 high school students signed up with BQA this year. And, you know, we're having a lot of good successes with that. And that was one of the major takeaways I got while over in Asia, was that they think BQA is so important to them. They just have a zero risk tolerancy on beef. And so if we're saying, hey, we're taking care of the animals, we're raising them right, and we want them to, you know, be the right product for you guys, boy, we're just doing the best we can over here in the United States, and I think we're doing a great job.
And Eamon, just kind of bringing it full circle here and kind of wrapping things up. I mean, there's only so many dollars, there's only so many head of cattle here in Wyoming that, you know, the beef checkoff investment can be collected from. And you men and women sitting around that beef council board are doing the very best job that you possibly can and making sure every one of those dollars is properly spent and used to its fullest.
Absolutely, yeah. We're still at $1 since we were in 1985, and here we are still using that dollar. You know, it doesn't go as far as it used to with inflation and these other things. We should be at over $3 if we were to move that dollar along with the inflation. We're getting amazing things done all over the world, as we just talked about, with our $1. So we're trying to do the best we can with what little we've got to work with.
And that's going to do it for this On the Road segment from here in Douglas, Wyoming at the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show. But be sure to tune in for some upcoming coverage, as our next stop will take us to Colorado Springs for the 2024 Colorado Cattlemen's Association's annual convention here in just a couple of weeks or so, also sponsored by our friends at Ag Risk Advisors.
Western Ag Network on the road from the Wyoming Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show, brought to you by Ag Risk Advisors.